Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, She Experienced. I just want to thank you all for watching, for subscribing, for commenting, for sharing. Again, I can't say enough how much I appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you for tuning into this video. Thank you for watching the previous videos. Just much thanks to everyone. If you have not watched part 1 of my fertility journey, you need to exit out this video, go watch that first so that you can come back and watch this video, because this video is part 2 of my fertility journey. So I'm going to pick up where I left off from the last video. So in, I want to say April or May of last year, April or May of 2019, I was about to say 2019, a friend of mine had texted me and asked me basically like what God told me about seeking a second opinion or just further looking into fertility treatment. At the time I had told her like I was waiting. We hadn't made any more moves. We hadn't done anything else. So I was just pretty much just waiting. At least that's what I was telling myself, that I was waiting. Just kind of going back to the last video, I mentioned fear, and I feel like fear was also in that, like it played a part in the length of time that I waited to go and seek, you know, a second opinion or see another doctor for fertility treatment. So her prompting or her asking me that question just kind of prompted me to really sit and think about it. I talked with Joe about it, about just really going to see another doctor and really kind of get a grasp or an understanding of what's going on and how we can move past it. So I think that just led or just opened the door for discussion. So that's what we did. Talked about it with Joe, prayed about it, and we were just both on the same page with looking into another doctor and just hearing what this doctor had to say, and in terms of treatment, possibly why we hadn't been able to conceive and how we can conceive. So I Googled fertility doctors in my area, and the first one that I came to, sorry, that's my dog, Cairo. He's trying to come in here. I'm in my office this time. Cairo, say hi. Hi, buddy. He just wanted to make an appearance. Not in there, okay? This is Cairo. So, are you gonna stay in here and chill? Love you, bub. Okay. Love you. Thank you. So I Googled fertility doctors in our area, and I found the Fertility Institute of North Alabama, which is the clinic I currently go to for services. They love you. Thanks, bub. Okay. So Cairo's just gonna sit here. You gonna sit here, bud? So I went to their webpage and I just kind of browsed around their about page, the doctor, and just being on the website, just kind of, I don't know, I just had this feeling like this was the clinic that we were supposed to be at. I just love their about page and what their name means. FINA in particular, that's their acronym, FINA. It in Hebrew, it means he shall add. And the reason just behind all of that and how they feel that, you know, even though they're there to assist and help, they believe that ultimately it's God who adds to the family. So that just stood out to me because we are Christians, and to see that this was a Christian owned facility that just kind of sealed the deal pretty much. So I reached out to them for a consultation, and it was very quick to get in there for a consultation. I mean, they sent us paperwork electronically to start filling out our medical history, and we were in there for a consultation, I would say like within a week after contacting them. So I would say this was about June. I think it was like right before my birthday when I went in there for, well, Joe and I went in for a consultation. So he's back. Okay, Cairo. Okay, good boy. So anyway, we went in for our consultation, and we just kind of told him like our medical history, what we have been through in terms of fertility, and the previous doctor that we saw, the possible diagnosis of endometriosis. So he wanted to look more into that, the endometriosis. Sorry. Go play outside, buddy. Cairo, go play. Okay, so we went to see the doctor for consultation, and we gave him our medical history, specifically what we had already been through in terms of fertility. So we spoke a lot about the endometriosis. He was really concerned about that being an issue. Also told him that my previous my OB had mentioned fibroids and possible tube blockage. I told him about the HSG. So he recommended the Saline Ultrasound. And I forget the actual term or the acronym for that, but basically it's kind of similar to the HSG, but it's like this saline solution that's entered into your uterus so that he can just kind of get a better view of what's going on. So we did that, or he recommended that, and then we talked about possibly IVF. He just kind of went through all the possible avenues, all the possible things that we would have to do. So he did mention surgery, the laparoscopic surgery for endometriosis. He did say that it sounds like I have endometriosis based on my symptoms and just the pain. He said, I understand that sounds like you have a high pain tolerance, but we don't want you to be in pain. Like, there's no reason you should be in pain every month. So I want to look into that. And the laparoscopic surgery is the only way to do that. So initially, I was just not feeling the idea of a surgery. I don't know if I have any Chicago Med fans out there, but I watch Chicago Med, other medical shows, and when I hear surgery, I just think of being cut wide open and blood everywhere. I just have this extreme idea or view of surgery. So I just didn't want any of that. Like, I don't want it. I didn't want any of it. So he asked me, how I was feeling about that. So I was just like, I'm being honest. I don't want surgery. So I felt like Joe cracked a joke about about Chicago Med or something. So then the doctor was like, well, let me explain to you exactly what it is. It's a non-invasive procedure. Like, they just basically go in with this small tube or this small, I don't even know what you call it. You can, again, Google this, but they go in through your stomach, and it's like a camera, so to speak, I guess a camera, so they can see in there. And they also said he was going to do a hysteroscopic procedure as well, which is when they go in through the vagina. So multiple entry points to basically see what's going on in the uterus. So when he broke it down and explained it to me, that just kind of eased my anxiety a lot more than what it was before. So I was like, okay, if this is what you're recommending, I'd rather that than just, oh, your symptoms aren't that bad, so we're not going to do anything. So I was more at ease with a treatment, with some type of, solution or a step towards a solution. So I was happy for that. And then, so that was the next step. So the next step was the ultrasound, the saline ultrasound. And then from there, we would do the surgery. So I think about a week or so later, we went in for the saline ultrasound appointment. And a lot of the things that he predicted in our first consultation, just based on the things that I have been talking about and the medical history, he predicted what's called hydrosalpinx, which is fluid on the tubes, which can cause blockage or damage. So he kind of predicted that, and that is what he was kind of seeing in the ultrasound. So in addition to endometriosis, which was still a possibility, he was able to see, that it looked like some type of fluid somewhere. My tubes just didn't look great, is what he was saying. So that endometriosis possibility, the fibroids, the tubes, it was just a lot. So he was like, yeah, I definitely would like to go in and see what's going on, what we're working with. And then we can understand why you haven't been able to get pregnant, and then how to treat this and move forward so that you guys can conceive. So he definitely recommended the laparoscopic and the hysteroscopic procedures, both of those done same time. And he wanted to schedule that as soon as possible, mainly because of the pain I was experiencing. And he just was like, let's get this ball rolling. So it was like, again, like a whirlwind of stuff. Like, it could be this, it could be that, but let's do this. But I just felt like I was in a better place to kind of accept all that, because I had waited so long. Joe and I talked about it, and then it was like, okay, let's move forward. This is what God has for us. We're going to keep trekking along. So he did kind of prep my mind. And this is one thing that he does that I like he kind of goes through all the possible scenarios, from like the best case scenario to the worst, just to get the wheels spinning and get your mind starting to think about all those possible scenarios, so that when a diagnosis is given, or when a final discovery is given, you're not kind of thrown off guard, or caught off guard, I should say, or just thrown for a loop. And I appreciated that, because my mind could kind of process all those different possibilities and not be in such of a state of shock or panic when a discovery was made. So he did talk about IVF, and he asked us, how do we feel about that? And I was like, I don't want IVF. So he's like, okay, so what we're going to do is we'll set up an appointment specifically to talk IVF, but that will come after, if we even need to have that discussion, after your surgery, because he said we can go in and see, endometriosis, clear that up. Sorry, that's my dog. He said we can see endometriosis, clear that up, and everything will be fine. You guys can try again. Or we could see endometriosis. We could see the hydrosalpinx. We could see these other things. And then you probably, your only option will probably be IVF. So I was glad to hear, that there were options for us, and that our doctor was proactive in, just our treatment and as a whole. It just made me feel good. It felt like he was working to help us basically have a baby. Like, it wasn't, I just felt like he was just very thorough and just kind of dedicated to us at that time, and trying to figure out what's going on and find a solution, as opposed to, just, okay, let's get to the end result. Like, help us find out what's going on. I appreciated that. So anyway, so about a month after that, I was scheduled for the surgery and did all the pre-surgery prep, all that good stuff. So before we went in for surgery, we had another talk, and he basically was like, okay, this is what I'm going in to look for. This is the possibility. These are the different possibilities. It could be that one tube is blocked or damaged. We remove that tube and the other one is fine. Both tubes could end up being removed, and, we clear out the endometriosis, so that excess tissue, clear that out. And, that would be like the extreme case, like both tubes blocked and both tubes need to be removed. So he said, I'm gonna be honest, I believe, both tubes may have to be removed. He said, but, I'm just hoping that that's not the case, but I just want to let you know that this is the possibility. So going in, I was nervous. I just prayed, like, Lord, just please help them not to have to remove my tubes. I don't want to be without my tubes. Yeah, so we had that discussion. We prepped for all of that and then went in for the surgery. So after the surgery, I remember waking up in this room. I just remember being so cold. It was like freezing. I was so cold. And I just remember waking up being cold. And I remember waking up in pain. So I was just like calling out for the nurse, like, I'm in pain, I'm in pain. So they amped up the pain meds or whatever. And then I ended up dozing back off to sleep. So like, I guess maybe an hour or so after that, I just had no recollection of time or anything. I woke up, Joe was there and a different nurse was in there. So they were just kind of chatting, and then they were, basically their goal was to help me I had to pee before I left so that we can make sure everything's functioned normally before they released me. So literally from the time I woke up, which was about 4 maybe, until about 7. So 3 hours of me trying to get myself to pee, drinking water, you know, going to the bathroom, turning on the running water. It was a lot. But anyway, so kind of fast forward to that, I finally ended up peeing like about 7 and I was able to be discharged. So the nurse was giving me like my paperwork and stuff, and she's like, okay, you know, so you know, they got your tubes. And then I was like, wait, what? And then Joe's looking at her like, shut up. Like I was going to say something. And she's like, you didn't know that they took your tubes? So I was like, I just started crying. I was like, I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't know that it was actually going to happen. So I just started crying. I was in tears and she's like, I'm sorry. And the next thing she says was, well, you can adopt. And I just started crying even more. And Joe was just like, ma'am, just leave. Just leave. So I just got dressed. I just remember getting dressed, they were helping me get dressed, you know, get into the wheelchair and wheeling me out. And I was just still like crying. And the lady's like, I'm so sorry. Like I guess she whispered to Joe, like, I'm so sorry. Joe was just like, I wanted to, you know, tell my wife the results of the surgery. So thanks, lady. But anyway, so I just remember us having that conversation, Joe telling me what the doctor told him, that it was hydrosalpinx and the damage and inflammation was so bad that if he had left the other tube, which hadn't really been damaged yet, there was a possibility that it could as well. So just to avoid all of that, just removed both and cleared out all the excess tissue, that inflamed tissue, scar tissue, all of that. And the small little fibroids, he said they hadn't grown, I guess. So that was no longer an issue. So it was just a lot. I just remember Joe saying that the doctor told him it was a lot. And it was just hard to hear, you know, because it's like, as a woman, it's like being told you can't do something that one of the things that your body is designed to do, like you're without your tubes. And it was just, it was a lot. It was a lot to process. It was, I just kind of felt like my body betrayed me. You know what I mean? Like it was hard. It really was, to just hear it and to process it. Like I said, even though my doctor had already kind of said that this would be a possibility, I didn't want to accept that one. I didn't want to accept that, you know, being the possibility for me. So I just kind of put that out of my mind and was like, well, this is the possibility that I want. But, you know, we know life doesn't always happen that way, and God allows things to happen the way they happen for a reason. So it was about a couple days, maybe it was the next day after my surgery, my doctor called to check on me, to see how I was doing. And he told me that basically everything that the nurse had spilled to me, that was the case, you know, the hydrosalpinx and endometriosis, all that stuff that had to be done. And I just remember him saying it was a mess in there, like so much inflammation. So he's like, that's probably why you've had so much pain. He was just like, he was like, I just can't believe it. Cause you know, for you to have all of the inflammation and stuff that I saw, and to have been in pain for so long and not actually get any treatment for it, like, it's like, you're crazy. How did you do it? So after that, he told me that my recovery time, I would be out the rest of that week. So that was like on a Thursday. So obviously the rest of that week I would be out, and then the following week. So he basically encouraged me to get as much rest as possible. That's really the true way of how my body would heal. And also taking ibuprofen, which is anti-inflammatory. He wanted me to take that to keep that inflammation down, because he was saying a lot of times with this surgery, the inflammation can come back, because if there's, when you're, in the way that I see it in my head, it's like if you're clearing out tissue, so you're having to cut, and in order for your body to heal, like your body, the healing process is like a scar, or how if you cut yourself or something, then a little scar or whatever will come. So it just kind of creates more scarring, more scar tissue. So he was just saying like all of that could come back, and there's no way to say that it won't come back. So I hope that makes sense. It just makes sense in my head. So I hope I explained that well. But anyway, so my recovery time was actually like 2 weeks. I remember like hearing other people's stories after having the laparoscopic procedure, like, oh, I was fine, in a few days, or oh, I was fine in a week. Not I. I was down for 2 weeks, and then even after those 2 weeks, I still had to take it easy. Like, it probably took me it probably was a month before I felt like myself again, because I was still having pains like from the surgery. Like, you get like this shoulder pain because of like the gas or whatever they say, and I don't know, something about gas, and you feel it in your shoulder or your upper back, and then lower back was hurting, and then the sites, the injection sites where he went, or I guess that's what you could call it, injection site or scar site, or I don't know, the areas where they went into my stomach, those areas were still kind of hurting. And yeah, it was it was painful like that first week, but even though it was like painful, I still kind of enjoyed it, because my husband took care of me. I didn't have to cook. I had friends and family who came over to visit, brought me food. So it was nice in a way, just to kind of be pampered and waited, not really pampered, but just waited on, and to not have to clean or cook. It was kind of nice. So I was like, the surgery thing wasn't so bad. So after that, my doctor wanted to see me. It was like a month after the surgery. So he wanted to see me, check on me, see how I was doing, and then we would talk IVF. So he explained, a little bit more in depth about the surgery, what we had done, and what our next steps would be moving forward. So we had pretty much an entire session where we talked about IVF, how I felt about it, some of my reservations about it, and he just kind of squashed all of that. Like, he just kind of squashed it all. And I guess it was just more so fears of the needles, the cost, oh God, the cost of IVF, just all of those things that I did not want to even talk about, things I didn't want to deal with, things I just never even wanted to experience were, what I kind of talked with him about. So yeah, that was that. We couldn't get around the cost of it, couldn't get around the process. Like, that was going to be our only avenue to, bear our own children. So I had to process that as well, like kind of grieve the ideas and stuff that I had for myself and accept this new reality for us. It was a lot. It was, but I feel like God like truly has been with us through this whole process, and just the amount of stuff that he allowed to be revealed at certain times. I feel like it was just enough for that time, if that makes sense. You know how we say, if it's not one thing, it's another. I feel like that's how it should be. You know, if all your problems happened at once, like every single problem you have in your whole life happened at once, that would be awful. So thank God things happen one thing after another, or it happens, you know, not all at the same time. So that was, you know, looking back, it was a blessing that I had time to process each little step and just kind of to get to where I am today. So the next thing was, like I said, we talked about IVF. The next step was just kind of gearing up for that. So I had the surgery in July, and then surgery in July, then I met with him in August. Sorry, my timeline is off. And then we decided to proceed with IVF in October. Yeah, I think it was October is when we decided to proceed with that. So we went through the process of ordering the medication, which the medication, oh mercy, it's a lot. If you've gone through IVF, then you know that it's not cheap. IVF can cost you anywhere from $11,000 to $25,000 or more. And that may not be including your medication. Like, that's a separate cost from the IVF. So the 11,000 can be for one cycle, up to 25 can be for 2 cycles. So that's considered multiple cycles. So it's a lot. So that was something else we had to process. Like, we had just paid off a couple small credit cards. So it was like, now this. Now you're like, Lord, like, we just paid this stuff off, and now you are expecting us to go into more debt. Like, how? That don't make sense. Like, how? So anyway, that was another thing to process and to wrap our mind around and try to figure out. So it was like, I would say like a month of trying to figure out how we were going to get these funds without having to use these credit cards that we just paid off. Like, I looked into working at Starbucks because Starbucks has insurance that covers IVF. I looked into doing that part-time. We looked into so many different things, different grants and all that good stuff, but it was just the timing of it, where the things that we were looking at were not an option for us. So we were prepared to start at the end of October, and I was just like, fine, we're just going to use the credit card we just paid off. It is what it is. I don't care anymore. So that was where we were with that. So I went in on the day that we were supposed to be starting our injections. Went in for what's called a baseline appointment. So that's where they take blood work, and then they do an ultrasound to look at your ovaries, you know, just to make sure everything's good to go so that you can start your injections. So the appointment went okay. The ultrasound was like kind of okay. Like, it wasn't like, great, you're good to go. It was like, I think you might be okay. So anyway, so we were still just kind of like giving the okay to start the injections that night. So I remember on my way home, driving home, like getting ready to start the injections tonight. I was excited to start giving myself shots. Go figure. So anyway, went home, or on my way home, I received a call from the doctor. So it was like after hours. So I talked with him, and he's like, I want to speak to you before you start your injections. You cannot start your injections. I was like, wait, what? He's like, your FSH levels, which is the follicle stimulating hormone level, is sky high. He said, like, borderline premenopausal. So I was like, wait, what? So I was like, okay, you got to explain. So I'm getting paper and writing stuff down. I'm like, wait, what? So he's like, yeah, he's like, I do not understand. Your levels have been normal, like pre-surgery, post-surgery, like there's been no indication of this. He said, so I need to get to the bottom of this. And so therefore I'm going to have to cancel this IVF cycle. I can't allow you to start these hormones that stimulate your ovaries if your follicle stimulating hormone is sky high. Like, I can't do that. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So again, the tears that came, I was upset. I was so devastated. I was so hurt. This whole process is such an up and down, such an emotional roller coaster that sometimes it's just unbearable. It really is. It's like, I just question, like, how do women go through this? Like, you get excited about starting something and then it can change in a moment. Like, it can change and things could be bad. Like, they could be good and then things could be bad. And I just didn't understand. I did not understand. And I remember waiting for Joe to come home. I was just in the bed in tears until he came home. And I told him what happened. And he's like, you know what? We'll get through this. There's a reason for this. We don't know why. We don't understand, but we're going to get through it. And again, another few days of processing. It was just the hardest thing at that time to hear that my body could potentially be going into menopause. I'm like, I'm only 33. Like, what? What the heck? What? So I remember the next morning, my doctor called me and he was just like, I just want to see how you're feeling. And what I do love about my doctor is he's always asking, like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Are you processing this? Where are you at with this? So I'm just thankful for that, because to me, it just shows that he cares. It's more than just, oh, she's my patient. Like, I genuinely care, like, how she's doing, how they're doing. So we talked about, or he, further explained to me what those levels meant. And again, he kind of explored, different possibilities. Like, if your FSH levels continue to remain high and you are in premenopause, then this is what this means. This means that we probably won't be able to use your eggs and you may have to use donor eggs. So I was like, I don't want to hear none of that. I don't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear it. So then he said, if not, he said it could just be, error at the lab. We're going to run tests again. We're going to get to the bottom of this. So he scheduled me to come back in like a week to run, the same tests again to see what's going on. He's like, in the meantime, I want to get all of your past blood work. If you can, get your some releases signed so that I can obtain all of your past blood work from previous doctors. I want to get all of that so I can see if there's anything that was missed, anything that indicated that this was a possibility, down the line. He's like, I just want to see everything so I can know exactly what we're working with. So I just love that he was just so thorough and wanted to get to the bottom of this, because I'm like, yes, we need to get to the bottom of this because we got to get this show on the road. Okay. So that was the next step. So like I said, in probably a week or so after that, I went in for more testing. I was just a nervous wreck leading up to that, going into it, praying like, Lord, please bring these levels down. Please make them normal. But it was like, at the same time, I didn't believe them. Like, when he told me about this, when he initially told me, I was like, I don't really believe that that's accurate. I kind of felt like it was the Lord that intervened, because that just wasn't our time to begin. That's honestly what I believe in my heart. Like, I didn't believe that, all of a sudden my levels just jumped out of nowhere. I truly believe, like, along the way, like up until that appointment, God had been trying to tell me to wait until January, because that was the initial option I was given. Do you want to start now at the end of October, or do you want to wait until January? I felt like the Lord told me to wait until January. But me being me, I was like, I don't want to wait until January because January is going to be a busy month. January is usually busy, like at work and stuff, you know, just the beginning of the year. I was like, I don't want January. January is going to be busy. I also had a work conference in January in San Diego. So I was like, nope, I don't want to do January. Let's do it now. But I felt like the Lord had told me to wait until January, but I didn't listen. So I felt like this was the only way to stop us from proceeding. Only way to, like, you're not going to obey on your own. I'm going to put a roadblock so that you have no choice but to do what I'm saying. That was it. So so after that, sorry, where was I? So yeah, during that process, like I said, I had been praying for money, praying over the medication, praying over the cycle, and I just felt like the Lord was just in that time period just kind of telling us to wait until January. So anyway, had that appointment, the follow-up appointment, the retesting and all of that. So it was right before Thanksgiving. And the nurse, I think it was like that Monday before Thanksgiving. So the nurse called me the next day and she's like, the doctor wants to meet with you guys on Monday. So the Monday after Thanksgiving. So I'm like, oh my goodness, she didn't give me the results. She's just saying the doctor wants to meet with you. This is not good. I'm premenopausal, and I'm like, I do feel hot. I do have hot flashes. Maybe I am premenopausal. Like my mind was just racing. I just gave myself a day to just cry and process, like, yep, this is what they're going to tell me. Like, let's just start. Yeah, this is going to be my reality. So I just remember Joe, like, well, you don't know what they're going to say. Like, don't put yourself or don't allow your mind to go there already if you don't even know. We don't know. So anyway, I just kind of gave myself time to just sit in those thoughts, those panicky thoughts, and then I gave them to God. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it to God. Whatever happens, happens. If the doctor tells me I gotta use donor eggs, then Lord, you better give us the best donor eggs possible. You know, so I just kind of was like, you know what? I'm done trying to control the situation and say what I don't want. And I'm just gonna, I changed my prayers from, Lord, I don't want this, I don't want that, to help me to accept whatever it is that your will is for us. Help me to accept it. And then we went in on Monday and I'm like on pins and needles. So the doc's like, okay, so we're gonna move forward with IVF. I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, oh, they didn't tell you? I'm like, no. I was like, I've been waiting all this time. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. They should have told you. So yeah, your levels were fine. He said your FSH level the first time was a 28. And he said when we tested you again, it was a 4. It's more of a normal range. So I was like, oh my goodness. So he's like, yeah, he's like, sometimes, you know, errors happen, you know, but we tested you again twice and they both came back. They came back normal. So we can proceed with IVF in January, like the Lord had initially told me. So I was just shouting, praising God after that, like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you. So we proceeded again on the path, like, okay, he's like, you know, putting me on these different vitamins, of course, prenatal vitamins, fish oils, CoQ10, and one more. I think that's it. Fish oil, CoQ10, vitamin D. So those are the not medications, but vitamins he wanted me to be on. And yeah, so we were set to start IVF in January. So that brings us to today. I have officially started IVF. I will share that process and how all of that looks and the process of, you know, getting the meds prepped and the injection. I will share that. So yeah, so that's where we are today. Man, one thing that I just learned through this whole process is to be careful what you pray for. In June, right around my birthday, I had prayed to God. I said, Lord, use me. You know, it's my birthday. I was like, I want you to use me use me for whatever it is that you have. I want to be used by you in this new year. So it was like right before my birthday. So I was like, in my 33rd year, I want you to use me. And literally after that week, or the week after that prayer, was when all of this began. That was when the consultation started and everything began. And I just did not expect God to use me in this way at all. I didn't expect it. And I just remember the Lord telling me, like, you're going to share your story. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, after it's over and done with, after we have our miracle child, I sure will. I'll do that. But he's like, no, you're going to share while you're going through it. You're going to show people what it's like, or why it's so important to talk about things that you're going through while you're going through it. Not every single thing, but some things are necessary to talk about, especially, like I said in a previous video, with infertility among African Americans, with IVF among Christians. There's just a lot of stigmas around that, and I just feel like it's important to kind of break those stigmas and talk about this process and make it more normal, or make it as normal as it is, because a lot of people are going through this. There's so many people going through this, so it's not like it's just one person out of hundreds of people. It's 1 in 8. So 1 in 8 couples will, or 1 in 8 women will experience some type of, 1 in 8 couples will experience infertility. So it's more common than we think. So, but it's not talked about. So the Lord was like, I'm going to use you in this community to talk about what it is that you're going through, what infertility looks like, and how to survive throughout this process, how to not allow infertility to consume you to the point where you are suffering in silence, and how to use God and his promises to get through, because that's literally what's getting us through. That's the only thing that's getting us through, is God and his promises, our prayer life. That's what's getting us through. And it's just, while it is an emotional roller coaster, it is possible to make it through. And that is what I want to share with people. That's why I'm so transparent about it. Even like at work, I've talked about it with coworkers. And I mean, I'll tell anybody who asks me, like, this is what we're dealing with, this is what we're going through, because I don't want any shame about it. I experienced so much shame initially, because shame and embarrassment, because it's like, oh my goodness, my body is not doing one of the things it's designed to do. I can't do this. And it's like, why allow yourself to live in shame, or why create this shame around something that you literally have no control over? Like, I didn't do this to myself, and something that God still has authority over, like he still has power in this. Like, it's not up to the doctors, it's not up to me, it's ultimately up to God. Like, this is an opportunity for God to get glory, for God to work a miracle. So why am I ashamed of this? Like, I just kind of turned that shame into thankfulness. I started to look at myself as chosen, because God chose me to endure this tough journey. He chose me. He chose my husband. He chose the both of us to be a light in this community, to be an encouragement to someone else, or to many others, to be, to just be that vessel. So I just started to feel not only chosen, but honored. And that's how I'm trying to look at this journey, as a blessing and not a curse, you know, as an opportunity to spread awareness and not live or suffer in shame or suffer in silence, to talk about it, to process, to get through it, so that this situation, or so that the waiting period is so much better than any other waiting period I've dealt with. In the past, when I've experienced challenges or in a season of waiting, I spent this season in so much anxiety and sadness and anger and frustration. Like, that waiting period was awful. It was awful. That's why waiting is so hard for me, because most of the time I spend it in frustration, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm, anxious about everything. Like, when is it gonna happen? When is it gonna happen? That, of course, the waiting is gonna be hard because you are filled with all of these negative emotions that God never even wanted me to deal with, So I made a conscious effort that this time I'm going to deal with this differently. I am not going to be filled with anxiety in my wait season. I am not going to be filled with anger. I am not going to try to take matters into my own hands and try to control everything. I'm going to assume a position of prayer. I am going to look at this differently, look at this as an opportunity for God to work. Like, I literally had to tell myself, like, you're not going to go through this situation and deal with it or spend this waiting period the same way you did the last. Like, you're going to do something differently. And I think because of that mindset and because of the daily practice, like, I'm doing something differently, it's just made this whole season of waiting, this whole period, not so painful. You know what I mean? Like, I've been filled with peace. I've been filled with joy. Like, yes, I have moments of anxiety. Yes, I have moments of sadness. I allow myself to feel whatever I'm feeling. I allow myself to process and go through, but I don't stay there. And that's the difference. That's the difference from this situation and the last situation that I've dealt with. And I think I'm just here I think God is using me to share that with others, to share that, you don't have to spend your waiting season in sadness and depression and anxiety. It doesn't have to be like that. Waiting does not have to be excruciating. It doesn't have to be painful. It can actually be beautiful. And I'm thankful. Like I said, it's like, how can you be thankful for something that's so painful and so up and down, emotionally charged? I mean, how can you be thankful? But it's nothing but God. It's not me. So without Jesus would be a mess. So the Sherelle with Jesus is at peace, is taking things one day at a time, is allowing God to take control, is taking time in prayer and study every day. Like, that's the Sherelle with Jesus. And that, I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, like I said, I will be sharing where we are now. I just want to give you part 2 of our story and just where we are today. So I just hope that this encourages somebody, whatever type of waiting season that you're in. It doesn't have to be a horrible season. It doesn't have to be filled with anxiety or depression. Your waiting season can actually be beautiful. And I just hope that my story and me sharing kind of what I'm dealing with, what I'm dealing with and how I'm going through, I just hope that encourages you to make your wait beautiful. It doesn't have to be horrible. So I think I'm gonna end it here. I feel like it's been kind of long, but again, I'm praying for everybody that's watching this video, that's in a season of waiting, whether you're waiting on your miracle baby or new job or whatever the case may be, whatever it is you're waiting on God for. I just want to offer my prayers up to you or for you in your season. So be blessed. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see y'all in the next video. And I think that's it. Bye.